Hello, Dr. Empress Rose. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, thanks. I am happy to be here.
It's
The Freshman Foundation. I've heard a little bit about you, so I'm quite excited to be here today.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Mhm.
And we're going to talk about all the wonderful things that you're doing right now. We know you're an entrepreneur. We know you have a book coming out. We'll get into all that. I think where I wanted to start because of the sort of the typical profile of this audience is your athletic background. So could
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about your sort of experience in sports, maybe as an athlete and a coach?
Yes. Well, I in high school, before I got to high school, in primary school, I ventured into running just about every race up to the mile. So I did 100, 200, 400, 800 to the mile. I was running, competing, everything, and winning everything. And, so I had a great mentor who actually, you know, knew that, okay, the basis for me to have a good education as well as to be able to do the sports, take part in all the sporting activities. And I was able to, maneuver through both of them. I really loved track and field. Well, I can't say loved because I still do. Yeah. Um, and then going into high school, I actually started to do a little bit of more sprinting, um, not worrying too much about the longer distances, sprinting and high jump. I was a very good high jump person as well, but to be frank with you, I can't remember like how I did it. In that period, we have to ask myself, I don't know how I got over that pole to begin with you. So, but I know in terms of sprinting, doesn't matter what age I am, if I get to the starting line, whoever is there just have to beat me because I will never tell myself they're going to beat me. I'm a competitor at heart. I came here just out of high school, migrated here to the US. I, of course, yourself and your listeners probably can hear the strong Jamaican accent back there.
I was going to ask you that question just to make sure, but you beat me to it.
Yeah. So I migrated here to the US. But before I actually talk about migrating to the US, I have a lot of awards that I won, a few awards that I won in high school as an outstanding athlete, one of them sitting on my
Mhm.
over here to my right. Yeah, so I was doing exceptionally well, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of Merlene Audie. She was my favorite. She was my influence. And then migrated here to the US. And then I was like, wait, it's cold. How is this going to happen? You know? So, of course, it is. I started to, telling my parents I want to go home, telling my mom I would like to go back home. And she said, no, you're crazy. There are opportunities here. And you'll get used to the weather. But it took me a while to get used to the weather. Now I am so accustomed to the weather. I actually prefer um, the cold versus the heat, which is
Interesting.
interesting right now. Yeah.
So when you migrated to the US, where did you land?
In Massachusetts, of course, Boston, Massachusetts, of all places. My uncle, who had resided in the US for years, he was the one who, filed for us to come over. And I came over April 30th. April 30th. And of course, around April, May, the weather started to change. So there are days where the weather would be great. And I would just leave the house and in practically nothing. And coming home, I'm like, oh my God, just so cold. So it took me a while to get used to it. So, of course, the training here, I had to push myself
Yeah.
to get into training in Boston. I actually coached myself for a while to ensure that I could withstand it before contacting a coach, to train with them because I just had to make sure I was prepared to be in that
Mhm.
zone. Yeah.
Yeah. No, no, that makes sense. So I want to go back. I mean, obviously, well, it's obvious to me. Maybe it's not obvious to somebody who's listening, but I mean, Jamaica has this, storied culture of sprinters, right? Most people know Usain Bolt, but the the Merlin Oddies. I mean, there's so many great sprinters that, growing up, like those are names I remember from the 1984 Olympics and the 88 and whatever, right? So like
Yeah.
what was it like? What was it like competing in that environment when you were growing up?
Um, it's compared to here, it's very different because I've coached here in the
Hmm.
US, high school students as well. And I've gone in and I've overseen programs to see just how they work. The difference for us in Jamaica is that you have to do sport. It's not, oh, you can't. You have to. It doesn't matter if you're 90 pounds or if you're 200 pounds, you have to do sports. And I'm glad that that was something that was instilled in us because it
Hmm.
goes a long way. It goes beyond track and field. It goes, back to when, in order to stay healthy, even after competing and stuff like that, that you would have to know certain things and how to get through it. Um, Very competitive, I must tell you. Jamaicans very competitive, especially on the sports scene. For primary school, we have sports day, which we compete against other primary schools, and the idea is to come out on top because then we'll get to go to champs. In Kingston, which is the capital, and we're
Hmm.
able to show our skills. And some of the, Merlin Hottie might show up to sports day and greet us and stuff like that. So we always look forward,
Yeah.
to getting out there as well. But um, all in all, Jamaican athletes, it doesn't matter which school you go to, everything is a competition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if I told you this, but I interviewed another gentleman from Jamaica who is a Canadian citizen, and he ran for the Canadian Olympic team. I think it was
Mhm.
1988. Robert Esme.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
400? Is that correct?
I think it was maybe it was a 400-meter relay. But yes, so very interesting guy, and it was the same. The reason I bring it up is because the same um, energy came through in the
Hmm.
conversation about the competitiveness, right? Like
Yes.
how important it was to win, and how important it was to show that I was the best, and I thought, and it wasn't from a place of arrogance. It was from a place of pride of like I've worked so hard to get here. Like this is
Yes.
my place, and I think that that's a great thing, right? Especially when you come from a small nation, right? Like to
Hmm.
be that powerful in a particular sport and then be able to show the world how good you are at something, it's got to be a pretty significant source of pride.
It is, but Jamaica, there are certain things with Jamaica though that's like a double-edged sword because you want to go to school, you would like to do track and field, you would like to do well, but it depends also what household you are in because just as how, for instance, you go to Ghana and Nigeria and you talk sports, and the parents do not want to hear anything about track and field. They want their kids to become doctors, right?
Hmm.
So, my parents were doctors. And so I can't talk track and field. I was good, but I couldn't talk track and field. All my parents kept saying, you have to have an education. They don't want to hear about the track and field side of it. So no matter how great I was, which is another thing, and it's something that we teach here in the States where we have to teach that psychology in terms of parents and encouraging parents to come out and see their kids because it actually helps.
Hmm.
During my tenure as an athlete, none of my parents showed up for competing at any of my races.
Yeah.
My dad showed up one day and he told me he was impressed, but that was it. It was always about the books. So I was a very great athlete, but it stopped at the door. All you want to hear about is the books.
Yeah. Well, I
Hmm.
mean, culturally, I think that it's going to be different, right? Across cultures. And listen, I think there's a fine line here in the United States. I think most parents here nowadays are very, very involved, and they're too involved in some ways, right? So you could
Yeah,
cross the
we get
line
those
from
that
being
are
right,
doing
right.
as
Is it,
well.
but
Hmm.
it's an interesting point that you raised because when I was growing up, my parents were not very involved either. And as I look back on that experience, right, like I think there's a lot of regret in the sense that like I did it on my own. But at the same time,
Yes.
I look back and go, like, if my parents were so caught up in my athletic performance, would it have been worse? Because I was hard on myself as it was to begin with. Now, if I have adults around me getting on my case about like you should have done this, you should have done that, you should do more, my anxiety would have been through the roof. So actually, like I could see it both ways. But when you're working so hard to be good at something, you want to be recognized, especially by your parents. And so, like, how do you think that their mindset about academics over athletics, how did that affect your career as a track and field athlete?
Um, I wanted to celebrate with my parents,
Mm,
tell them about how good everyone else think that I was. And I just couldn't do that.
mm,
However, um, in 2004, as I trained for my Olympic trials, I got injured. And there is a little, with my book that's coming out in July. I just had a book
mm,
that I released, but that book is a book of poems. And of course, it's autobiographical. But the written literate publication that will come out in July, this is something that I speak on as well. In one sense, I was so happy that my parents pushed me to go to school and to get an education, because when I got injured in 2004, due to that injury, I wasn't able to walk for a year and 10 months. And I had to think there was nobody there. So all my friends, they didn't come around anymore. Yeah, it was I have two kids, a boy and a girl. And they were the ones who actually was there for me and to get
mm,
me, the necessary things that I need. And I had to think, well, I've spent so much money going to the doctors and stuff. I'm running out of money. What do I got to do?
mhm.
But there it goes. I have the background in terms of being so talented and doing different things and can do different things to survive. I had to tap into that, and it wasn't just because I was street smart. It was because of the education that they pushed me to get.
Yeah. Right. And I think that, well, there's just a couple of things in there that I want to ask you about, right? Like how much how much do you think that your experience as an athlete helped you to be resourceful in that situation?
I would say 100%.
Yeah.
um the athleticism is it's what is a premise of everything that I do. And that discipline goes beyond track and field. It goes beyond just about everything. um when I couldn't walk, there it goes. That's the thing that helped me to push and say, listen, do you remember running 12 seconds and then you got to 11 and you had to push yourself? This is one of those moments where you have to push yourself
Mm.
to move forward. There, days when it is I went through so many different things, but it is that always come back to that place where you remember the strength that you have, that you instill within your training, that made you great and a great athlete. Even when you lost, it wasn't a loss. It was just that somebody else did better than you today. And if you wanted to be better than them tomorrow, you just had to go back to the drawing board and work a little bit harder as well.
Yeah. I think I love what you just said because it comes
Hmm.
through in so much of my own work where I think it makes so much sense the way you just framed that those 2 sentences, right? Like somebody was just better than me today, right?
Hmm.
Doesn't mean they're better than me tomorrow or they were better than me than yesterday. They're just better than me today. And what can I learn from the experience to go back to the drawing board and get
Yes.
better? And I
Yes.
think a lot of times athletes don't have that mindset. They have the mindset of I got beat, I'm not good.
So that's
And they
it.
shut and yeah, and
Hmm.
they shut down, and they shut
Yes.
down, and they don't have the resilience to come back because they feel like, well, I should have done this. And
Hmm.
as a competitor, right? If you're a competitor, there's just going to be some days where you get beat. Someone's better,
Yes.
or you have a bad day, but it doesn't mean you're not going to come back and compete tomorrow. And I think that doesn't always happen. So at that point, when you were going through the injury, you said was a year and 10 months. You said
A year and 10 months. Yes.
Was that the point in your life where did you retire from track and field at that point?
Well, no. What happened is that I I spent a mass amount of money here in the US. I was misdiagnosed at first. So when I fell, I was told that I sprained my ankle.
Hmm.
And I was in a boot for 6 weeks. I came out of that boot and I started training again, still trying to see if I could make the trials. And I remember going to my massage therapist, and he says to me, he says, Rose, your ankle is dangling. What are you talking about? I said, look, your ankle is dangling. You need to get an MRI. That does not look good. And that's how I ended up just getting an MRI, and from the MRI, recognizing that I fractured 4 bones in my ankle. So I was
Oh,
actually competing on fractured bones.
oh my goodness.
Yes, I have a very high tolerance for pain, I must
Apparently,
say.
apparently you
Yes,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So with that injury, because of where I was in my career, what I'm looking forward to, if they had to put pins, I had, it was between putting pins in my ankle, which I
Hmm.
would have limited or no movement. Um, or I was told I may not be able to compete at the
Hmm.
volume that I was, or to stay off of it for a year. And
Hmm.
basically, they would make me a brace and snap it back in place. And I chose the brace, snap it back in place, and that I would stay off of it for a year. But
Hmm.
after a year, it would get better.
Oh.
So I ended up actually going to Jamaica, and I'm seeing the athletics the doctor, and he gave me some pointers what to do. And in about 2 3 months, I was able to start running again. But after I started running, I said, okay, you know what? I'll train for 2008.
Hmm.
So in 2007 to late 2006, I started training. But every time I would run, I would see black spots when I'm running, when I'm sprinting. And so after going to the doctors, 8 different doctors, they told me there was
Hmm.
nothing wrong with me. Until one day I said, there's definitely something wrong because I know I almost fainted. And that was
Hmm.
it. I walked into the hospital. They told me if I was outside 5 more minutes, I would have dropped dead. My when I didn't couldn't walk, it created blood clots in my legs
Oh,
that
okay.
moved through my lungs.
Oh my
So I was
goodness.
told that I couldn't compete again because of that.
How
Yeah.
old were you? How old were you at that point?
I don't even remember. Let's see. um, that was I had to be like around 20, 25, 20, 25, 26. Yeah.
Okay.
I was told that
So,
I couldn't compete anymore. So I was already coaching on the side, but I
okay.
didn't, you know, uh, delve into coaching like that. But it appears that whoever I coached, they always better their time. And that is
Hmm.
something that I could say throughout my entire coaching career.
Hmm.
Whichever athlete I've trained, they have never ran the same time that they come to me. They've always
Yeah.
bettered their time.
Excellent. How, so you were already coaching at that point, but how was your transition into retirement? Like, what was that like for you?
It was very hard. It
Yeah.
was very hard. It was very depressing, to say the least. I got very depressed because I didn't want to stop competing. I had a goal and I felt like I was robbed from that goal. I remembered there was an athlete I mentored on the Jamaican team.
Hmm.
And when I told her, I says, I will not be able to, you know, compete anymore. And she looked at me and she says, well, God has different plans for us. And maybe that's your plan. You do it so well with coaching.
Hmm.
You are the one who influenced me because I was the one who influenced her actually. And she made all the way to the Olympics. And she got to the Olympics. She couldn't even believe she was at the Olympics. She called me crying, saying she can't compete. She can't believe she's here. Something that she wanted. So now she was telling me that, you know, um, I am a very good coach. And maybe
Hmm.
that's what I should be doing, versus competing. God has different plans for us. But I was so upset I didn't talk to her for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, I mean, when you work your whole life
Yeah,
toward a goal like being in the Olympics, right?
yeah,
And it doesn't happen, I can't imagine that it's hard not to be angry or bitter that it was ended, and it was ended because of something that was out of your control, which was the injury, right? And so
yeah.
that's life. And I think, it's easy to look back, not easy, but when you look back on things and you go, "Oh, okay, this makes sense,"
Hmm.
after all these years, that, hey, maybe it was my purpose to be here helping athletes, and that was the way I was going to move forward. But in that moment, right? Like, no, you're like,
Yeah,
that's my spot. Why aren't I running? Like, I can't believe
yeah.
I'm not going, right?
And I'm saying, you made it to the Olympics. Why would I not want to go? There was someone I was coaching as well as
Mhm.
I promoted a track and field awards ceremony. So I put myself out there as, I was already promoting various events, and I promoted the New England Track and Field Awards ceremony as the one who initiated it. And the athletes were just like, so they were loving it because they had something to look forward to every year, whereas they didn't have something like that before.
Mhm.
So I was also, very good at that as well. And the athletes were so happy. So yeah, she recommended, she's like, you're doing these things and you do them very well, but maybe it's not just your time.
Yeah.
That was
So
that.
how long did you coach for?
Well, I've been coaching for over 20 years. Yeah.
So you're
I
still
was
coaching
coaching.
today?
Yeah, I was coaching while I was competing, but
Mm,
I didn't take it serious. I was, persons would just come to me and ask me for pointers, and I would give it to them, and it worked.
yeah.
So as I was told that I couldn't compete anymore, I went full fledged into coaching, and still training, doing some little things by myself as well, just to stay in shape.
Yeah. So now your world has changed pretty
Hmm.
significantly. You're into I think the way you describe yourself as a serial entrepreneur, right? And I think that
Yeah.
as somebody who's an entrepreneur myself, I think this is something I'm always very interested in. So tell me about that path, right? When you started to sort of pick up new things or start new businesses and try new things, like what was that like for you? Like how did it make you feel in the process?
Um, well, here's the thing. Even though I did track and field, I always have a small business on the side.
Mhm.
And I started promoting, which was my first thing I started doing when I came in the US, by arranging for other musicians to travel to the US, and I would rent, different venues and do all the work or whatever. So I
Mhm.
was a promoter. So I had that as well. And even though
Mhm.
I did sports, I was always doing music as well, and I just grow into it. Just natural for me because I started writing songs at a very young age as well, and studying the music notes and everything like that. So that just come natural. So when someone asks
Mhm.
me, "Can you write a song for me?" and I was like, "Okay, no problem," you know, that's it. It was never a
Yeah.
problem for me because it's something that I always do. So it was easy for me to maneuver into start writing for other artists across the world. So now it's not only that I do track, I write programs for some of the track and field athletes, but I
Mhm.
also write for some of the musicians across the world
Wow.
in different languages as well because I speak 9 languages.
Really? 9 so
Yeah.
what are the 9 languages that you speak?
So in high school, depending which high school you go in Jamaica, you attend in Jamaica, you learn a few languages there. So I already had learned French and Spanish
Mhm.
there. And then for my dad, I traveled to Africa a few times with him. Well, so I speak Tree, which is spoken in Ghana. I
Mhm.
understand Pidgin English, which is spoken in Nigeria.
Mhm.
Um, I speak some Portuguese. French Creole,
Hmm.
um, and I speak Shona, which is in Zimbabwe, which I
Wow.
learned recently. And my mom used to reside in Curacao, so I speak Papiamento.
Wow. That's a lot of
Yeah.
languages.
But I think,
That
I was just saying to someone that, I need to do my ancestry because all my brothers and sisters speak numerous language. My mom speak 12. I have a brother that just passed
wow.
away. He spoke 15.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
And
that.
I have a grandson that speaks four languages and he's only 6 years old.
Wow.
So I want to check it out to find out
So
about this
so
historical that's going on here. Yeah.
yeah, that's so fascinating. So
Yeah.
you went from from being an athlete to being a coach. You were
Hmm.
writing songs, and
Hmm.
you've moved into writing, right? You've written how many books have you written?
I probably have around six books right now that I've written thus far. Um, and I do films as well.
Wow.
So the last film that I did is The Battle of Adwa. This was when the Italians colonized Ethiopia. So I wrote a song, and I didn't realize. Well, when the person asked me to write the song, I didn't realize that it would have been a song that Ethiopia adopted. So I wrote it for a Grammy winner, Brian Gold. Is a reggae artist. Won gold alongside with Shaggy and Tony Gold. And I wrote the song for him, and then it was afterwards. Then I was told that yeah, it's for the Ethiopian Federation. And so I wrote that song last year, and then this year for the Battle of Adwa anniversary, I did a short film and included the song within the film itself as
Yeah.
well.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. Very cool. I I I mean, I love the creativity that comes with
Hmm.
entrepreneurship in the sense that, like, there is no one right answer. Typically,
Yes.
it's like trying to find something that works, but, like, then you take it to the next level, which is creating art, right? Creating music, creating writing. Like, that's
Hmm.
that it's a very interesting world and stuff. In fact, I just started reading a book about um,
About
creativity and
creativity.
yeah, creation of art. It's by Rick Rubin, the music producer, who produced like the Beastie Boys and like all these acts. Right, he wrote a book called The Creation of Art, and I just started reading it. And it's a very interesting, very short chapters, but he has a very like existential view on creating, and I just find the process fascinating, and I think it's really cool when people can go out and create and continue to create new things and like have that sort of, you know, that motivation all the time and that gift to do it. And I think it's really cool. So I guess the question I wanted to ask you just in general is,
Hmm.
so like being in entrepreneurship, like what are some of the qualities or skills or things that you've learned that parallel with sports?
Um, of course, sports take precedence. It's like the premise, even with doing, with the entrepreneurship, it
Hmm.
teaches you a lot. As being an athlete and training at the volume that I trained at, it teaches you loyalty, how to be loyal, not only, you're not with a team now, so to speak, but to be loyal to the persons that you serve, to the profession that you have, and to uphold that highest standard. So needless to say, even though I'm an introvert, yeah, I'm an introvert,
Me too.
and I'm out there in this world that is not introverted and is like, "Oh, I just want to stay in the back and do what I do." So persons that will actually see me on your podcast be like, "Oh my gosh, she's finally showing her face." Yeah, but the thing about it is that um, sports has a lot to do with setting the tone to how it is that you work within whatever profession you do as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
It's going to help you along the way, you know, to shape what you do. I woke up at 5:30 every day to train. from primary school, you know?
Mhm.
And so my body is used to it. And it actually helps me during this entrepreneurship,
Sure.
as well. By the time I get up at 5:30 and I get a lot of work done and the world is awake, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, oh, I already got you. I am way
Yeah.
ahead,
Yeah.
so it actually helps. Actually helps.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it's the discipline, right? And I've had those moments of being able to sort of create these analogies in my brain, right? Where, like you said, like if I was able to get up at 5:30 every day to train, then why can't I get up
Yeah,
5:30 every day now to invest in my business,
in
my
your own
businesses,
business.
right? Right. And
Yes.
you're creating that discipline for yourself, which like sports gives you that. Cause I think for a lot of people who are not involved in sports at a young age, they may not be as disciplined, or it may be harder for them, or it's just less common. And I think that that's something that a lot of people will share. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, to piggyback on the creative aspect, the book of poems that I just came out a few days ago, I have a poem within that book that talks about creativity. And I'm actually going to be writing a separate book about creativity and how important it is with sports and being a creative, because they go hand in hand as well.
Yeah.
And there is actually a creative scale that's used to measure how creative you are. If you are a big C or a little C, as well within your industry. Little C could just means that you would like to create things from now and again, but big C, you dabble in, you're not as afraid of being a creative, and that comes with money. So you have to be prepared as an entrepreneur. Are
Mm.
you are you willing to lose thousands of dollars to chase your dream? You know, yeah.
I can relate.
Trust me, I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Mhm.
I think so the parallel I've been starting to draw, and it's a lot of it's through these conversations, because a lot of the people who come onto the podcast are former athletes who've moved into entrepreneurship. And
Yes,
the parallel I draw is when you get involved in sports when you're a kid, like you're investing all your time and your energy and money. You're making sacrifices for an outcome that's unknown, right? But you're
unknown.
still doing it, believing that you're going to reach this goal. And entrepreneurship's basically the same thing, right? You're investing everything you have into this
Time
business,
and
money,
exactly.
and I'm committed to it no matter what. And I don't know what the heck's coming out the other end, but I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
And most people don't appreciate that, understand it. They're not comfortable with it. They want security.
Yeah.
They want certainty. Give me a paycheck every 2 weeks, and I want to know what's coming. And for us, it's hey, look, I'm going. I believe in this. I'm going to go. I'm going to give it all I've got. And if I fall on my face, it won't be the first time, right? And I
You
think
know,
it's a go ahead.
I a friend of mine, I just actually said it on my radio program a few weeks ago. A friend of mine called me and he has a 9 to 5 and he says, "I'm going to quit. I want to be like you." And I was telling them, I was laughing so hard. I was like, "If you have any idea what you're saying right now, you better be prepared." There
Yes.
are days that I went to bed with nothing to eat, and the clients don't want to hear that. Well, no, when is my work going to get done? They don't want to hear that, and you just have to make things work.
Hmm.
If you're not prepared to put in the work, being an entrepreneur is not.
Hmm.
It's not going to be easy. I'm not discouraging anyone to not try it and go out there and follow your dreams, but just know that it's a lot of work that you have to
Yeah.
put in on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think my own experience was when I decided that I wanted to go down this road in my life, because I wasn't always this way, was
Mm-hmm.
I prepared for that transition. Like I knew it was going to be hard. I knew that I didn't know how much money I was going to make. I knew that there was going to be all these questions, and like I got myself mentally prepared for it. Like hey, you're going into this, like know what you're getting into, and then once I'm in, right? But I think for a lot of people, they like the idea of it, They like the
Mhm.
idea of the entrepreneurial lifestyle. I don't have to work for somebody else. It sounds so great, blah, 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 blah. And then you get into it,
Well,
right? And there's no paycheck or there's right,
just
you don't get the
like
results
you,
that you
I
want,
didn't know. You
right?
know, where it is that you knew, I didn't know. I was just like, oh, this is what I want to do, and I dive into it.
Mm.
And then when I lost all my life savings, I was like, oh wow, what I gotta do now, you know? So that's why, even, my friend, when I says, listen, you better be prepared, because if you do not have the tools, life will humble you and it will teach you, yeah, what it is that
Yeah.
you do not know. Yeah.
Well, I think we're very similar in a lot in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So tell me about the book that's coming out, the anthology of your poems.
Oh, so the book was released on Monday. No, I'm
Oh,
sorry, Tuesday.
mhm,
Last Tuesday. And it's I tell you, I am humbled by persons, well, I am humbled in a sense, but
mm,
before, years ago, a story. I lost everything, and I was homeless, living out of my car with two kids. And I worked my way back. I worked my way back. So something that I learned with coming back is that when somebody on social media reach out to you and says, I see you doing something and I want to give you like some pointers, or I want to send you an article, you never say no, because you don't know who is who. And even though especially in the industries that I work, you're never too old to learn. And that's something that I learned over time, is like, just go along with the flow. So I released this book, and you don't know who is looking as well when you're working. You do
never.
not know who is looking and watching and saying, yeah, she works hard, or she's doing something and I'm going to help her, or I'm going to say something to her. I woke up the morning, and I received a few messages across social media, and persons that were telling me, I read your book and I was crying. I read your book and I was in tears. Thanks for the book. And I'm like, I didn't even know I was going to sell it. To be frank with you, I didn't even know I was going to sell one copy.
Of course not. You have no idea.
Right? And so when you say that to someone as an entrepreneur, it's like, how would you not know that? You just don't know, because we've been
How do you
through
know, right?
so many phases of entrepreneurism that you don't know. But to wake up and see persons that I don't have no idea who these people are, purchase the book
That's
and could
very
tell me
cool.
what was their favorite poem and ask me questions, like what happened here. And it's like, wow, I was floored. So it has been making its rounds, and I've been promoting it heavily
Yeah.
as well. And I have
Yeah.
persons now who have jumped in, who I don't even know, that shares the book with other persons and said, listen, read this book. So
That's
I
great.
said, oh,
Uh,
look at that.
That's the best. Well, that's the best way to build an audience, right? When someone recommends something, whether it's a book, a movie, a TV show, whatever it is, a coach. When you recommend somebody, like those people are going to listen because they trust those people, right? So clearly, you're doing
Yes.
something right. And I'm glad you shared that story. It's funny you say that. Like, I
Mhm,
haven't written a book and I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I will one day. But I just started building this course that I've been
mhm.
thinking about for some time. And it's the same idea, right? I'm investing, gonna end up investing thousands of dollars into the course, like, and all the time I've put in. And I have no idea if one person is gonna buy this course, right?
Right.
I have no, when I launch it, I'll find out. But like
Yeah.
you believe in it, right? You believe in what you're doing and you're like, I
Yes.
have faith in myself. I have faith in what I'm saying is important and valuable, and I'm going to give it everything. And if I don't sell a copy, well, I know that that's a possibility, but at least I tried, right?
Yeah.
Versus not trying at all. And I think when you put that energy, I mean, not to get too far flung here, but when you put that energy into the world, I think people pick up on it, even if you don't realize, like you said,
Yes.
they're watching you.
They're watching. And you may put something out, and then this, being an entrepreneur, there's so many different angles to what you do within your job yourself. And they may come to you for another service that has nothing to do
Yes.
with what you're doing, and somebody may strike up a conversation. From the book going out, I have a lady that reached out to me. She didn't even know that I used to be an athlete and stuff like that. And she has a son who wants to get into track and field, and he's very good, but she don't know where to go for a coach or a coach him and stuff like that. And just from talking to me, and she was so happy. She was like, "Oh my God, can you help me out?" And I paired her with a coach that that I know can work with her child until a certain age. So you never know.
You
There you
never
go.
know.
Yes.
That's great. So, I mean, as we wrap up, the last question I always ask everybody, Rose, is what's the one piece of advice you'd leave to somebody listening to this? And you could do it from the perspective of an entrepreneur or however you see fit. But like, I like to leave them with one thing so that they can sort of say, okay, if I get nothing else from this podcast, here's the one thing I got. So, like, what would that piece of advice be?
Um, to When we talk about persons, we're going through a very difficult period. People blame it on COVID, and whether it be COVID or other things that are going on in our world, just know that you know there's always a way out. There's always another day. My parents always say to me something my mom always say actually. She always tell me, she's like, just remember, there's always someone out there who's worse than you. There's always
That's
somebody
right.
out there that's worse than what you're going through. So don't think that it's the worst. You just have to keep on going, keep on going.
Uh huh.
Um, and even reading the book of poems will show some of the things that I've been through. I'm a cancer survivor. I There's just a lot to the book,
I
So,
think you need to write an autobiography. Your story
and
is incredible.
yes, I have a book that will be coming out in the future. It's called Miracle Baby. I wanted to release it for 2020 because I'd also written a song for the Olympics. However, the Olympics never happened, and I just decided that the time wasn't right to put it out as yet. But I wanted to use that platform then. It was called Miracle Baby, fueled by music and track and field. Miracle
Wow.
Baby because it's always a miracle the amount of things that I've been through, and I've been able to pull myself out since birth. I was born weighing a pound and an ounce, 1 pound 1 ounce at 27 weeks. So a miracle from birth. So I
That's
named the book
incredible.
Miracle Baby, and it will come out sometime in the future. But for now, my focus is on um, just putting out those stories for the poems. What I did was, if for the book of poems, it summarizes what each chapter is about, and you can gauge by what the poem is saying what is to be expected
Mm,
in the book that will come out in July.
I got you. Okay, that's great. So where could people find the book?
It's on Apple Book. I
Okay.
haven't put it anywhere else except Apple Book, and so all
Okay.
Android users are like, "What's going on?" We need it as well. So, what I've been doing for persons with Android, once they have Gmail or Facebook, I'm on Wattpad, which is an app for authors. So what I do is I release parts of the book 2 to 3 days per week. I released 2 parts last week, and so we'll be in order. So I already released the preface. This week I released the foreword and one of the poems as well.
Excellent. That's great.
Yes.
Well, congratulations on doing that. It's an amazing
Yeah.
accomplishment, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the book myself and reading it because I think there's
Oh,
just
I'm giving
so
you
much
a
to be
signed
learned.
copy.
All right, there we go.
All my interviews, I am giving a
That's
signed copy
that
so you
sounds
don't.
wonderful. I'm really looking forward to that. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. This was great, great conversation, and let's stay in touch and maybe do it again in the future.
Oh, for sure, for sure. It's a pleasure being here. And to everyone out there, just remember tomorrow's always another day. Keep pushing through.
Great way to end. Thank you so much, Rose.
Thanks, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Same.